In honor of it being a dog park talk, I'm Gwen Gamble, and like always, I'm here to host the town hall, but we brought Rosie along today because she's interested in dog parks too. We want to thank Sunriver U for continuing to host SROA town hall meetings. I really want to thank everybody who's here today. It's very well attended. Today we have Keith Caceres from SROA to talk to us about or do his presentation about the dog park. And then after his presentation, we'll move to a question answer session. The only way to get your question asked is to type it in the chat to Sunriver U. And then I will admit that we compile like questions. So the wording that I give might not be exactly as you typed it. It might be in general in comparison to what everybody else asked. So in honor of all our dogs out there, here's Keith ready to share the dog park.
Good afternoon, Gwen. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today with us. We really appreciate it. I am Keith Caceres. I'm the Assistant General Manager with Sunriver Owners Association, and I'm also the staff liaison for the SROA Dog Park Task Force. So to give you a little background on how the task force came to be and why we are here today discussing about a dog park potentially here in SROA. Back in 2019, during the Infrastructure and Amenities Master Plan Task Force, where we looked at all of our infrastructure items and also our amenity-related items such as parks, facilities, etc. During that time frame, one of the ideas that came up was a dog park, and there was a scoring criteria that was developed at that time for all of our amenities such as Fort Rock Park, Plina Park, etc. And one of those, and then also infrastructure needs such as roadways and pathways. But during that 2-year process of the IAMP, once again, the dog park kept coming up as something that was interested to owners. And so fast forward, we also have, during the last and most recent master plan that was put together by the Parks Master Plan, which also we hired a consultant to do that work, and earlier in 2022, and then carried into early 2023, the dog park also came up as a high priority during the master planning. So with the discussion on that, it's one of the items where there were some items that came out of the Parks Master Plan that were more long-term related. There were some that were more short-term related. Some had a higher cost to them, estimated cost. Some had lower estimated cost. And breaking out some of those projects, like one, for example, is we want to look at a Fort Rock master plan as well. I mean, Fort Rock serves the needs of a lot of owners here in Sunriver. But at some point we want to look at ways to better utilize Fort Rock Park itself. That's one option that came out of the master plan. But the second one was to really develop a separate task force to look at the dog park itself, because we felt like it was important enough based on the feedback we had received from owners to do more research. So the board approved a task force this past spring, and we had our first meeting on June 1st as a task force, which was made up of, we have 2 board members. We have members at large in the community as well. In addition to that, we also have a property manager that was involved as well. So we want to make sure we had a good representation of our ownership here in Sunriver to be part of that task force itself. So one of the goals of the first meeting was to figure out, what are we looking for with the dog park? What are the needs that need to be met with the dog park? Obviously, right now in Sunriver, your dogs need to be on a leash or under voice command. And that is a little bit tricky because not every dog pays attention to their owner, even especially if a squirrel runs out in front of them 5 feet away, right? So I know there's been some challenges on some of the pathways with some interaction between bicyclists and pedestrians and dogs. And so, we're trying to solve one of those issues for safety and think, well, this is a good way to look at an option in Sunriver. Before we started looking at location availability in Sunriver to potentially house a dog park, I also did some research with other large-scale communities across the country. And actually, I visited one in North Carolina where they just finished building a dog park themselves. And one of the neat things I've seen at most of these large-scale communities is that they have separated the small dog park from the large dog park. So that way it's a little bit easier, and it's usually safer with smaller dogs to play together and larger dogs to play together. So that's kind of the concept we looked at as well as part of our amenity offerings we looked at wanting to potentially utilize for a dog park. So, we looked at infrastructure costs. What would it cost to build one in a certain location? We also looked at the use, and we looked at the location in Sun River, meaning how easy is it to access the location? So that was another criteria we looked at as well too. And then we looked at it in reference to proximity to other facilities in Sun River. So there was many attributes that came into some of the decision making that we came up with. Another key criteria is based on the land that Sun River Owners Association owns and maintains, and also the common area here in Sun River that is owned by a percentage of all owners. There's only a few sections of Sun River that are designated for a use of a considered park use by Deschutes County. So if you try to utilize land that is not designated for that use, it requires a lot of extra steps through the county to be able to change the designation or use of that property. So with that, keeping that in mind, there were 3 locations we looked at. One location was Pasture 11, which is just north of the marina parking area, so where our boat launch area is. So that is one section that's designated for that use, which is a big pasture there. It's a very big open pasture. Right now we have a very small section of that is overflow parking for the boat launch in the summertime. But that land out there is very uneven, and it's also in partial floodplain area as well too. So infrastructure wise, it would cost quite a bit of money to develop that properly to where there's a solid enough base for people and dogs to be out utilizing. The advantage of that area, though, there is a restroom facility there at the boat launch, so that was a nice option. And then but also it's fairly far out. I mean, so we were also trying to look for a place where people would want to walk their dogs to easily as well. Also, another piece of property in Sun River is right off of Shamrock Lane, so which is right to the east of Fort Rock Park. So just to the east of Fort Rock Park is Shamrock Lane, and just to the east of that, between there and Circle 10, is a 3-acre piece of parcel that SROA owns that would be designated for potentially a park use as well. The scoring criteria for that piece of property came down to a few things. There's 5 homes that are directly right behind that location of that property. It's also a very busy area itself, especially with 15 pickleball courts in now, where the 6 tennis courts used to be at Fort Rock Park. Parking is already an issue at Fort Rock Park, and this would just add to the parking challenge that's already there. So that was a difficulty as well too. And also that's a piece of property that's once again surrounded by a lot of residential. It's right on a curve. It would require pretty extensive infrastructure costs to try to build something out and also actually build another parking lot as well. Then you're starting looking at pavement costs, which gets pretty expensive. So those were the 3, that site, and then also where the proposed location now for the dog park is at the Cottonwood Tennis Complex. So that is, for those of you who don't know exactly where that is directly across from the Marketplace store off Cottonwood Road. We've had tennis courts there for 15, 20 years. And we just redid those tennis courts about 3 years ago, and they're in great shape. But that is also an area during the most recent Parks Master Plan, and also back 2018, when we were working on the IAMP plan, was a potential for kind of a regional park to be put there. So currently right now, there's just 2 tennis courts there. But the thought down the road might be that could be a great area for an additional, a new restroom facility with a pavilion, maybe some picnic tables and other small amenities. So keeping that in mind, we were trying to find, okay, is there enough land there to have something complementary that would tie to potential future use of a regional park? And so when we went out and looked at the site, it's very level for one, and it's actually more space than we initially thought. And the nice thing about that location, there's 3 different pathways that come into that area. So it would be very easy for people that do live on that side of Sun River to walk their dog to that area to get to the dog park itself. So for those of you that did come out yesterday, we had a sneak peek of the site yesterday, and thank you all for braving the rain. It was not the best conditions out there, but we appreciate you coming out. And we walked the site with owners and answered some questions for them as well too. Right now, anyone can go out at any time you'd like. The area is flagged with small irrigation flags. When you pull into the parking area there at that location, you'll walk about 30 yards to the south, and you will see right next to the pathway, right before you get the tennis courts, there is some yellow flagging And that is where the entrance would be for both the small and the large dog park. So the idea would be to have basically roughly a 10 by 10 kind of holding area where you'd walk in with your dog, and then you would choose to go to the gate to the right, which would be the small dog park to the north, and then you would go to the left to go to the large dog park. So while I'm talking about that, let me share this real quickly, make sure everybody can see this. So as I'm mentioning here, as you would come in, you would drive in here, and then this would be where the entrance right here is to the small and the large dog park. So let's see, make this a little bit bigger. So this would be the entrance here. And if you had a small dog, you would walk into this side and your dog would play here. In large dog park, your larger dog would play on this side. After talking to some of the owners yesterday, this little extra bump out here to get some more square footage. These residents back here were pretty opposed to increasing that. So we've talked to them about potentially just cutting a straight line right across here. So they would line up before the tennis courts as well. So it wouldn't be beyond or to the side of the tennis courts. That would also benefit the tennis players. And then also we did have some discussions with some of the church members, with the Holy Trinity Church is right here. And Sun River Christian Fellowship is off the page here to the left. Some of the concern was people that were parking their vehicles there with dogs potentially, barking, etc. So we've talked about potentially looking at to move this line here just a little bit to the east to make that a little bit smaller and get a little bit more separation between those parking spots and the dog park area itself. This area would be fenced. So the whole dog park would be fenced with the same fencing that is currently at the tennis courts now, which is basically a black metal chain link fencing. And then there is an opportunity to put some vertical screenings or slats in the fencing on this side. So they would protect some of the view from those at the church that want to park back in these parking spots back here. At this point, basically what the plan would be to have we would have some bench seating for owners to sit down, to get their dog or relax while their dog is out running around. Also, there would be water available for humans, but also for dogs as well. So you would want to bring your own dog bowl, but we'll have water provided. And then also we would we'll have some signage, and so operation hours, etc. We haven't worked out those details yet, but those were some of the discussions we had yesterday with owners. And it would be available to all SROA owners. It would also be available to rental guests that come here, that rent a home from an owner, or guests that are visiting someone that are just visiting the owner as well. They could utilize this dog park. So once again, this will be the large dog park area here, and this will be the small dog park area here to the north. The blue outline is the outline of the property itself that SROA owns that is designated for this type of use at this location. And when I was speaking earlier about potential future ideas of a regional park, this is the area that I was talking about where potentially a bathroom building, covered pavilions, picnic tables, etc. may be down the road, but we're not to that point yet to even look at that concept, but that's just part of what potentially could be at this overall site. This is, based on when we went out and looked, there's a lot of trees at the site as well too. The advantage of that is it provides some natural shade, which is really nice. And that was one of the important amenities looked at. That was one of the challenges with pasture 11 out by the marina. There's just no shade at all out there. So it gets pretty hot in the summertime. And then as I mentioned, like during the winter out there, you potentially, if there's quite a bit of snow on the ground and it melts, you could be standing in water. So that's why another reason not to choose that location. But yeah, this has been, it's been vetted by the task force. We went out and looked at the site, we flagged it. And I think it's a very usable piece of land that right now is not currently being used. It adds an amenity to the tennis court complex that's currently already there. And then also there's just thinking about, restrooms and other facilities. There's also restrooms available right here at Marketplace Store. But during the summertime, we usually have a porta potty out here for the tennis courts, which we could always add one for the dog park as well too at this point. But overall, the square footage is about 767 feet total between the two. This is if you take the linear footage here. So it'll be a little bit less than that since we're cutting off this section potentially and making this a little narrower on the west side here. At this point, so we've had 4 meetings, and then we had our sneak peek yesterday, and then today is the webinar, obviously. But the idea is we want to get feedback from owners to get your thoughts on this location. And also, once we move forward with the process and meet with our design committee and They would review this process like they would any other project in Sun River. If it gets approved by the design committee, then we will start looking at costs to build this. And the goal would be for June, hopefully sometime next summer, June, July of 2024, that this would be open and ready for use. And then ideally, it would be more just the natural state that the train would be. And then we'll see how it works for a year and see how much people utilize it. If there's anything else, other amenities we need to add in the future. But we want to give owners an opportunity to use it and see how they do use it before we make any additional changes going forward, if and once it is approved. Gwen, that's kind of my overall view and snapshot so far. So turn it back over to you for a few minutes and see if people have some questions.
Thank you, Keith. It will be just a minute. I'm waiting for a technical situation so I'm visible. But while you're sitting there, we had plenty of questions come in. Will this affect the bike path in the area in any way?
No, it does not affect the bike path at all. I'll get back to the.
I love a yes/no question.
Yes, no, it does not affect the bike path. You can see the bike path runs here just to the east, and then it goes into the tennis courts and then goes south as well. So no, it doesn't affect it.
Okay. I'm trying video again. All right. Can the area suggested, apparently the church has suggested an area. I'm unaware of what that is. Is it being considered?
Yes, let me draw. Hang on just a second. If I can do this. I'm trying to see me drawing on the screen here.
I see right in the middle.
They suggested there, and like for the small dog park, and then the larger dog park over here. So that was their suggestion to move it where it is here to those two locations instead. Like I said, we were out there yesterday talking to some of the church congregation. And the discussion we had with them was if we move this a few feet to the east, they felt much more comfortable. And also some ideas around, potentially not having the dog park available during church hours. So like on Sunday mornings, for example, things like that. So there were some discussions about operational hours that would also benefit them as well too.
Okay. Thank you very much, Keith. Can the area, hold on. Sorry. Have you thought at all about summer and winter areas? As I'm just reading the questions as they come. So seasonally, what services would be provided?
So basically at this point, like I said, we would provide a restroom facility. So the owners of the dogs would have a chance to go to the restroom while they're there themselves as well. And then water would be available. The challenge is we would have to see if we can provide water during the really cold winter months, because that requires additional infrastructure to make a water fountain that doesn't freeze. So we'd have to talk about that. I'm not sure if that's going to be a possibility in the winter, but it would definitely be available in the summer or majority of the year. There would be water flowing there and available. But there's, like I said, there's already some natural shade there, which is great. We would leave the bench seating out there year round as well. It'll be weather resistant seating. So that would be also as an amenity. And then the parking area itself, it looks small here because you see there's 1, 2, 3, and then there's 5 parking spots on this side. There's also parking right here and right here that is already graded and is gravel. So there's additional parking spots on each side. Down the road, years down the road, if it got really busy, we could always potentially pave that as well. But right now, they're not designated, but they are gravel areas that would be available for cars to park on.
Right. And do you foresee during the winter making sure that the bike path and parking area are serviced by your snow removal?
Great question. Yeah, so the road going in and the parking spaces would be plowed. I would talk to Mark about that with our public works department, but that would be part of their routine. They would go through and plow that as well. The pathway system, it would be potentially plowed, yes. The challenge is we have a hierarchy of roads we have to get to first in Sun River before we plow pathways, due to safety and other corridors here in Sun River. So yes, that depending on how deep the storm is, et cetera, there's a lot of factors that come into play, staffing as well. But yes, the goal will be to have those pathways cleared around that section also.
Okay, now some questions about the fencing. You referenced the tennis courts as an idea of getting what kind of fencing is it's that
Right.
black chain link, but how
Right.
tall would it be?
So the fencing would be 4 feet in height is what we're looking at. That would be all around the perimeter of the site itself. And then on this side, following the west side linear line here, that would be slatted like black slats. So that would basically create a screen or a buffer between the dog park area itself and then the parking lot to the west.
Okay. Is there any berm planned?
As of that, excuse me, that did come up yesterday. As of right now, there's not a berm that is planned. It doesn't mean we can't look at those options, potentially doing a berm on the west side itself. You really wouldn't need one on the east side because you're fairly close to that pathway as well too, and you wouldn't want a berm to kind of slough off into the pathway itself if heavy rain or snow melt. But that's a possibility on the west side. But it may not be needed if you put solid screening on the screen itself. That would block significant amount of activity in that site.
All right. What about parking in the church parking lot? Is there anything going to be done to discourage people from parking over on that side?
Well, what we would do is we would, one, people aren't allowed to park there now that are not utilizing the church for actual congregation services, right? But it would be, we would sign it appropriately in regards to the signs actually at the park itself. But we would also do our best, we would highlight it in the Sun River scene. We would do it through e-blast. We would make sure owners and continue to let them know that they're not able to use the church parking area as a location to park to get their dog access to the new dog park. And I think it'll become pretty obvious. I mean, people, you won't have an entrance on that side anyway. You would have to go around to the front side where the pathway and the parking currently is.
Oh, I like that idea. Just make it terribly inconvenient if you do park in the church.
Yes, I mean, they would have to walk all the way around the entire facility to get in.
Okay. Any dog experts on the task force?
Yeah, most of the task force, yes. We actually have almost everyone on the task force that I know of has at least one dog on the task force. But we also have one of our task force members, he leads multiple dog classes throughout the year and works with other dog trainers. And so he's been speaking as a consulting individual with that trainer, talking about different ways and what's the best way to utilize or what amenities you want to see at a dog park. And in addition to that, I've spoken with general managers and other association managers about how their dog parks, since they built theirs already, what challenges they're seeing, what do we need to look out for, etc.
Okay, is that area for big dogs really big enough for the big dogs to get up a run?
It is, definitely. I mean, when you get out there, I would say the majority of the conversation yesterday with people was like, wow, this is a lot bigger than I thought it was. So yes, there's plenty of room for them to get up a full sprint.
All right. You mentioned that you had included some dog trainers in this. Would you be allowed to reserve the dog park for a dog training session?
That we don't know yet. I mean, we're too early in the process at this point. One, we need to see if it gets approved in this location, and we want to see some of the use of it first before we would say, yes, you can reserve a certain amount of time. I don't know that yet. We haven't had a chance to discuss that as a task force and how we bring that to the table at this point yet.
What's your timeline look like?
So the timeline looks like I mentioned, we ideally we would try to get in front of their design committee later this fall, either in November or December. And then if we get approval from them, would be to start getting construction bid estimates. And hopefully the goal will be to open up summer of 2024.
All right. Now, will access be limited to an SROA card swipe system?
No, as I mentioned earlier, it would not. It would be available to owners. It'd be available to those that rent homes. It would be available to guests that visit owners here in Sun River. All those options would be available. We haven't talked exactly how the gate process will work at this point yet, whether we make it a gate where it was powered and meaning where there was a timer that was set to it. So that way we can lock it during non-operational hours. So we're looking into each of those options for that gate system itself. But no, it would not be limited to just card holders only.
Okay, so this is just one idea that somebody's presenting here is can that small dog park area be extended more towards Cottonwood, thus increasing the space of the large dog park area?
There's a potential for that. Yes, we were trying to, we were trying to leave some open space between there and the pathway to the north that comes through here, and it's a busy roadway up here on Cottonwood, obviously. So we were trying to be a little bit cautious of, just the congestion up here. Doesn't mean we can't move it a few more feet that way potentially. But there's also, I think I have to go back and check. There's a utility corridor near there too. We have to be careful of, but yes, there's an option to potentially move this a little further to the north.
All right.
But once you get out there on site, that's why we would love for people to go out and see it, because on a map it looks, doesn't look. It's hard to judge it on a map versus seeing it in person.
Right, for sure. And what color are the stakes out there? You said they're little flags.
They are pink. So the stakes where the entry would be, where you would come into the holding area, which is a 10 by 10 space here, those are yellow. So if you start there and just imagine yourself walking in, if you have a small dog, you'd walk to the right. So all these flags along here are all pink. And then the flags on this side are also all pink as well too. So you can see the entire spot outlined by pink, except for the yellow flagging that's here at the entrance.
Okay, thank you. And how about garbage and poop bags?
Yes, so there would be trash cans available out there. There would be poop bags available also as well. One of the signage requirements would be that you need to pick up after your own dog. So we don't want dog waste to be on the ground that stays on the ground where other humans can step on it or other dogs can step in. And so that would need to be put in the trash receptacles that are there. And just to give you an idea, every single day our public works staff goes out and changes trash in 65 different locations in the Sun River. Oh. So this would be an additional location we would add to that group, add to that number. So it's already busy as it is with trash cans on our pathways and throughout Sun River. And this way we would add another area for them to go clean.
Okay, what is the budget for this dog park?
Right now the budget is about sitting close to about $50,000.
Isn't that amazing?
Most of that cost is in the fencing itself. Fencing is not inexpensive. But obviously we would need to fence it properly. But that's where the majority of the cost would come into play.
All right. Will it be available at night? Like, will there be any lighting?
No lighting will be there. No.
Okay.
We're a dark sky community, and so we wouldn't want that anyway, and especially for the residents and the homes that are nearby, you wouldn't want to create additional artificial lighting.
Perfect. And there's only the one entrance on the east side, correct?
Correct. Yes. And that's on purpose because that's where we want people to pull into the parking area here or walk on the pathway to access the area. Yes. And also on this side, you wouldn't be able to get to it for the most part unless you went on the property of the church, which SROA obviously doesn't own. So right. That's the reason you don't want access on that side.
Yeah. So exactly. The church is private land and we're avoiding imposing on that.
Correct. Yes. 100%.
The expanded area, I'm assuming that the person who wrote this question is referencing west of the park, or the rest of the park.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there a timeline for expanding into that?
No, not at this point, because once again, it came out of our Parks Master Plan to look at different regional park options in Sun River. And another regional park option was also at the Meadow Tennis Complex. There's some additional land down there for potential amenity upgrades at that facility. But those are just right now, those are concepts that came out of the Parks Master Plan. There's not been any engineering design work done. True cost estimating hasn't been done either. But once again, this was designated as a potential regional park area. And this would be a complement to the regional park to add something like a dog park at this location.
Okay. And what is kind of the guideline or rule or the delineation between small and big dogs?
So that's a great question. One thing we've been looking at different options. There's other communities in the city of Bend and then Bend Parks and Rec. I mean, they've been using, some use like a sign. So basically like you walk your dog up to the sign. If your dog is higher than the height of this sign, then your dog goes to this section. Or if it's smaller, it stays in this section. And so that's one way to do it. It's challenging to do it by weight because not everyone really knows the weight of their dog. But if you do it by size overall, like a dimension of the animal itself, that helps kind of delineate between which direction and which side of the park they should go on based on the size of their dog, based on how it meets the signing requirement.
Right. It makes me think of the slides at the Shark. Right?
Yes, it's pretty similar to slides at Shark. Yes, you got it. Correct.
Is there any plan to put down any chips or any kind of ground cover other than what naturally exists?
Not initially. It's not part of the initial budget. It doesn't mean down the road that would be an option that could be added. It just isn't once again, as I mentioned earlier, we want to, if and when this facility gets built, we want to see how it's used and we want to get feedback from owners that do use it before we go spend money. And that's another thing. Wood chip is not inexpensive. However, we have with part of our latitude reduction plan we do in Sun River, we do a lot of wood chipping. So we could definitely use chip from that down the road in the future if we choose to, or if that's something that owners do want. But we want to see how it's used initially before we put any ground cover down.
All right. And I suppose that there is a natural, with any dog park, there's owner's discretion for if it's right for your dog. And
sure.
And that just has to be left sort of unsaid as a responsible dog owner if this is a place right for you and your dog.
Right. I mean, that's information that we would do our best to try to convey, early on through different articles and things, just kind of started to educate people about the dog park and etiquette in the dog park as well, too. That would be part of that also. But obviously, you're not able to control everyone's actions and or their dog's actions. But you do the best you can to educate on the front end, which in turn hopefully will mitigate any risk in the future.
Okay. Is there a grand opening dog park party planned for dogs?
Great question to ask. The owner enrichment committee has already decided they would love to be part of the kind of grand opening celebration. So they would be looking to help kind of host a party, kind of an event, once we are ready for the dog park to open, if it gets approved and it moves forward as a budget item for 2024. So I can't give you a timeline because one, it's got to be approved, and then two, we have to, time and material to get the product in, get it set up, built, all of that. We're not exactly sure, but our goal is open summer 2024.
Okay, and
yes, there would be some sort of grand opening.
Okay, thank you. Within the natural structure that's there, are there little hidey holes or areas of retreat for dogs to hide from other dogs or do that kind of playfulness where they hide and pop out?
More so on the south side, which is where the larger dog park area is. More closer to this area. It's kind of hard to tell because it's kind of covered by trees, but in here there's a kind of neat little rock outcropping that's here. And then there's a small one kind of right around this area as well too. So yes, there are some areas where dogs can kind of dive in and out and play that kind of catch me if you can game.
Okay, and then of course, always our big concern, what signage or information will be made available to visitors?
The visitors themselves. So yeah, I think everyone, those that use the park itself will have signage on the entrance gate area here that'll alert basically the etiquette of the dog park itself and when the operational hours are, etc. So all that information will be shared in articles and e-blast ahead of time, but then it'll actually physically be on the fence itself as well.
Okay, and initially, I don't know what the master plan is for when toilets go in, but is there any chance to have a portable toilet?
Yes, like we talked about, typically there's a portable toilet there during the summertime for the tennis players, and that would be something we would look at, bringing in more of a year-round portable toilet at that location.
Okay. Well, Keith, I can't thank you enough. It appears that that's all the questions. Oh, did I get another question? What? One more? Nope. None of the trees are being removed, right?
Correct. No, that's a good question. Yeah. So the trees are not, if any, I can't quite say none, but as of now, the plan is not to remove any trees. No, but the goal is some of that area is fairly rocky. So we'll have to see where we can put fence posts in. So we may have to adjust kind of the actual diagram the layout a little bit based on rock and what's under the ground, for them to be able to drill the fence post in. But this plan, no, there's not a plan to remove any trees, because we want to use the trees as natural shade.
Well, Keith, thank you so much for this informative session. And I hope everybody who joined in today is feeling like they're getting their questions answered. I know it's made me wish that I had walked the ground yesterday, but I was feeling scared of the rain.
Sure, and like I said, anyone's feel free to go out. You're more than welcome to go out and walk it yourself, take a look. If you have questions, you can also email myself, which is Keith K at srowners.org. And then I will get those questions to the task force so we can talk about them at our next meeting.
Oh, that's so good. Communication is really key in this community.
Yes, definitely.
So, and I really want to thank every homeowner who signed on today. The Sun River U forums are really informative and a great way to keep up to date with what's happening here in Sun River. So whenever you see the opportunity, please sign in or sign up so you can get the sign in. Also, Sun River U records every one of their town hall meetings, and they're available on YouTube, usually about 24 hours after the meeting. So if you have friends that have questions or want to know more, they can always go back and watch this forum, listen to it or watch it on YouTube. So thank you, Keith.
Oh, you're very welcome, Gwen. Thank you. And thank you to all the owners that participated today. It was great to see a large turnout, and we appreciate and look forward to talking more about this upcoming project.
Great. Thank you so much. We look forward to it. Take care.
You as well. Have a good afternoon, all.